Hello and welcome to On the Clock, presented by WorkStream. If you care about hiring, managing, and paying hourly workers, this is the podcast for you. I'm Daniel Blazer, and today we're clocking in with Dok Kwon, President and COO of Cupbop. The Korean quick service restaurant currently has 57 locations in the US and 170 plus locations in Indonesia. And wherever there's a Cupbop, you'll find a ton of raving fans. Dok and I discuss how they've created such a special culture and the unique ways that they screen applicants to reinforce their fun, playful brand. We also chat about his experience being on Shark Tank and how starting a food truck was so important to Cupbop's success. Enjoy! Thank you so much for being here, and I'm really excited to chat a little bit.
Well, thanks for your time.
To kick things off, can you just briefly share kind of the backstory and history of Cupbop? When did it start? Why? Some of that good stuff.
So Cupbop started in May of 2013 in Salt Lake City as a food truck. And I wasn't actually the founder. I met the founder very early on. I was actually the founder. Cupbop's one of very, very first customers when they just had opened their truck. And I was a big fan, raving fan. But yeah, it's been over 10 years now. Last year we had our 10-year anniversary. And we've now gone from a food truck to we are 57 locations here in the States between 7 different states, and we have a lot of locations in Indonesia. We have over 170 now at this point in Indonesia. Just trying to grow and grow responsibly and with the goal of becoming a national brand.
Yeah, well, you're well on the way. Are those 57 US locations, are those all corporate owned, or have you guys opened up to franchising?
The answer is the majority of the stores are still corporate. We haven't really officially, opened it up for franchising in any real way. We have one franchisee that was actually grandfathered in before my time that now operates 23 stores. But we did decide, at least for now, we've decided to not pursue kind of individual single unit franchises. We are potentially, testing the waters on working together and partnering up with very strong multi-unit franchising groups, and that's something that we're testing the waters on. But that's where we're at right now.
I did want to ask, did you say there's 170 locations in Indonesia?
Yes.
That's a ton of locations. Why has that been one other location that you've been focusing on? And maybe, briefly, I'd love to hear, what's the difference of growing in the United States versus growing in Indonesia? What's harder, what's easier, that kind of stuff.
The answer is our partners who are the best in the world. F&B Indonesia, our partner out in Indonesia, they actually do essentially all of the operations out there. And so, give credit where credit's due. I have to give them full credit. We're out there for training, new menu updates, things like that. Once or twice a year. But all the credit goes to our partners. We were very fortunate to be able to team up with a wonderful, wonderful partner. They're a big F&B group out there in Indonesia, and yeah, crazy enough, how this whole deal came together also was through the Cupbop truck. They were, two of the students happened to be attending the University of Utah at the time. Were big fans of the Cupbop truck. They were coming to the truck every chance they could, and they said, come to Indonesia with us, and they, the founder ended up visiting there, and only then did he find out that these two students, they come from a very, very well-renowned family out there in Indonesia. And yeah, the little brother Devin is now the CEO of the whole F&B division, which is kind of crazy. And that's how our relationship has been. And it's, I wouldn't change a thing. And yeah, we've been just very lucky. is real the real honest answer.
So maybe you've already kind of started to answer this question, but Workstream, like one of our main office hubs, is in Lehi, Utah. So Utah is like a special place for us. I would love to hear why Utah kind of played, how it kind of played a special role in the success of Cupbop and the growth. Like, yeah, what is it about Utah? Maybe some of the unique factors that contributed to that.
The Cup Up brand, the truck, started in Utah. You know, the founder had come from Korea and was living in Utah, and so she happened to be here. I also lived in Utah, you know, the vast majority of my life. And you know, even though I didn't join Cup Up right off the bat, you know, it's always had a very special place for us both. Yeah, it's a great economy, number one, as you guys probably see it firsthand, and there's a lot of talent, right? You know, I went to BYU, go Cougs, and just you know, great economy, great talent, a lot of awesome people, and then people are just really nice. Um, they really accepted our brand with open arms, and we've been able to really kind of grow one store at a time, starting here, and it's still our hub market. You know, we have the most locations by far here in Utah, and so yeah, we love the market.
So one of the things that I think is kind of fun is that you were on Shark Tank. I'd love to hear just briefly like what that experience was like. What was maybe the number one thing that you guys learned in that experience?
Yeah, it was fun. I actually had a blast being on Shark Tank. Um, I actually used to be an investor myself before I joined Cupbop, and so I was very used to being on the other side of the table. And it was actually my first time um, in a real way going out there and pitching our brand um, from the entrepreneur side. And yeah, I thought it was a ton of fun interacting with those sharks. I mean, you know, they only end up airing 15-minute segments, right, per kind of brand. But we were in there for over an hour, and it gets, you know, it gets really intense. It's very real. They don't know anything about you until, you know, you literally walk in and you start explaining your business. The biggest takeaway, honestly, was a confirmation that, hey, this business has what it takes to take it to a national level. And you know, I obviously am the biggest believer that you'll find out there, which is why I joined Cupbop. But it was good to get that confirmation from all of the sharks there.
For those that maybe didn't know that you were on that, what that it sounds like some one of the sharks invested, right? Is that the outcome, if I remember right?
Yes. Post the show, things ended up falling through,
Okay, interesting.
unfortunately. But you know, it just comes down to, look, on the show, all you talk about is price and you agree on price. You know, after the show's done, you you start working into their, you know, with their teams, and there could be a lot more asks, right? That was not discussed. And I thought, you know, we ended up parting ways in a very amicable way. And it ended up being, I think, you know, really good for us. So,
Yeah, well, like you said, the validation definitely, and then obviously the exposure, right? So many, probably millions of people now know the brand Cup Up that
yeah,
maybe didn't know before. So sounds like
absolutely.
definitely an upside. Um, so you mentioned, you know, the beginnings of Cup Up were all around the food truck. Um, and I was just wondering, do you have any specific lessons you think that you've taken from the fact that Cup Up started as a food truck, maybe in terms of scaling, or, you know, thinking of location, stuff like that? I'd love to hear.
Yep, absolutely. I actually think it's been a huge advantage for us having kind of our roots, you know, in a food truck, given, you know, you only have so much space to work with, and generally so much time too, right? Because it's a lunch rush. You're at a commercial kind of site where there are a lot of businesses, people come out, right? And they have, a limited, time for lunch. And so, it naturally set our model to be very efficient. We can operate in very small spaces, with, fewer people than perhaps some of our competitors. And that allows us to, have great economics. At the end of the day, these four wall businesses, it's all about lowering your break evens and your fixed cost. Because, the model has very high operating leverage. And so, it's actually been a big competitive advantage for us starting, from a food truck.
Yeah. So my next question, kind of related to scaling, is obviously, you said, I think 57 locations, 7 different states. That's a lot of growth over a decade. And as you know, like Workstream is dedicated to helping, mostly quick service restaurants hire. So I'd love to hear what sort of challenges you faced in terms of staffing all of these locations as you've scaled.
Oh, it's always hard. Obviously, I think regardless of industry, it's hard to hire good talent. Traditionally, kind of what we've done, and to this day still, has been word of mouth. Obviously we have a lot of, teenagers working in our stores, friends bringing friends. The platform we've historically used has been Indeed. Social media has actually, helped a lot. And it was actually a byproduct of just having our social media, because it wasn't necessarily for hiring. But since we have a pretty, young, energetic, cool brand, we have a lot of, for example, on TikTok, we have like 750,000 followers on TikTok, and a lot of them are Gen Zs, and they vibe with our brand, and so they'll apply. We've actually seen a lot of benefit from that, but it's always tough. Like GSR, it's the restaurant industry is notorious for high turnover, things like that, and that's something that we continue to battle with every day.
Well, that's cool though that you have that awesome following on TikTok. That's probably somewhat rare, at least to have like that much brand loyalty among Gen Z. I'd love to hear, like, as you are interviewing and training team members, what sorts of things do you prioritize, or like, are there specific things like kind of within your culture that are like, oh, this is the most important to look for as we're trying to hire?
For us, it's energy and the hospitality mindset. It's all about attitude, right? At the end of the day, and we if we can have the best of both worlds, it would be somebody with high energy, because that a person like that would fit very well with our brand, and instantly just meld into our culture. But obviously, the most important thing, I think, is having the right attitude, right? That's something that you can't teach. Um, so yeah, I think one of the, first questions that we actually, try to always lead off with is, are you happy? That's our first question. And kind of people kind of that have that happy virus, that are always smiling, that have that energy, willing to help out guests. And that is honestly the most important thing for us at the at the store level. And so we try to, it's hard to obviously, always find people like that. And it just goes back to our culture of being a food truck. Cupbop was known to be a very kind of energetic, loud, like these crazy Asian guys, food truck. The founder used to be a b-boy, he used to be a break dancer. And so he used to always be dancing in front of the truck. And that's, when I used to always go to the Cupbop truck, that's what he was doing. And so that just kind of over time became our brand. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the short answer is energy and attitude.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me is Cupbop's fun branding and messaging, and just, like there is an amount of kind of energy and excitement there. How do you make sure, and maybe it's just that energy that you said, but how do you make sure that like your team members are all kind of reinforcing like the fun, I guess, of Cupbop?
That's one thing that I'm really confident about, especially over the long term. We still obviously have a lot of work to do. Um, but I think it really, the tone needs to come down from the top, right? You can't say, hey, we have fun culture, have fun. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way, right? But, from our leadership team, especially Jung, how we created a brand, as I just discussed, I'll give you an example. We were just at a recent opening in a city called Moore in Oklahoma. And we were there with Jung. I was there with Jung, and we had our grand opening where we do $5.99 special for the grand opening day. And Jung, for the whole day, 7, 8 hours, he was out on the street with the $5.99 banner just dancing with our crew. And that's something that, you can create a clever brand through TikTok, marketing, this and that. But at the end of the day, for it to last long term, it has to be genuine and it has to jive with the consumers. And I think, we ultimately have to do that internally as well, first, right, with our people. And so, we try to have a lot of fun. We've tried a number of different things. For example, we used to do these podcasts we call Bobcast, where we'll get on video, we'll do dumb things, we'll have fun, and then we'll update all of our people within the company, the things that are going on at Cupbop. Also, we try to hold a lot of fun competitions, within the company, our promotions, things like that. And we just try to not take ourselves too seriously. Everybody at the company, we try to keep a pretty flat organization. We have a lot of fun here around the office as well, and that's just how brand started. And so I think the key is obviously training is important, right? But just the culture itself, I think, has to come from the top, and that's something that we really put a lot of emphasis on.
So let's say someone else is listening to this conversation and they have an idea and they're like, man, I hearing about Cupbop and their success, that's inspirational. I'd love to open my own food truck or even my own quick service restaurant location, several locations one day. What would be like the number one piece of advice you give someone in that position?
It's a tough business. It's absolutely a tough business, but one that could be extremely rewarding, I think. Um, the best piece of advice, I probably wouldn't start with the food truck now, right? I think back then it worked in that market when it was there was a big food truck boom. And it was more of a rarity, at least in Utah 10 years ago. But food truck is an absolutely brutal, brutal business and something that you can't, really scale. Hence why we also, converted over to brick and mortar stores at one point. So I probably would start with as low risk as possible, right? Find a location that, it's probably a second gen, restaurant locations where the build outs are, minimal. Hopefully you can just convert it and use as much as existing, infrastructure and existing equipment, in the space to start with, as low risk as possible and try to also, it depends on I guess, also, the concept as well, but, try to start in a smaller location, right? I do think at the end of the day, this business comes down to number one is always survival. You gotta survive until you can get your brands out there. And what most of the brands have trouble when they start off as they scale is it's hard to survive the first few years. And so really dial down your risk as much as you can, and give yourself enough runway to get your messaging and your brand out there. I think that is what I would do if we were to start, another brand today. It would be, okay, let's find a second gen location. Let's lower our risk. Let's make sure that we have a good handle on around our break evens. and come up with a strategy of how you can win. It's a brutally competitive business, obviously. There's not a lot of barriers to entry, things like that. But that also means for the new entrants, there's always room to overthrow the, existing establishments and really shine. Just like, the fact that Cupbop started from a food truck and we've grown to where we are, kind of shows us that it's absolutely possible in this space. So yeah, that would probably be my best 2 cents that I could provide.
Thank you for listening to On the Clock. For more info, visit workstream.us/podcast. Until next time, we're clocking out.